Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your stack of sources, articles, research, maybe even your own notes, and, well, we dig deep. We pull out the key insights, those surprising facts, and the aha moments that really help you understand a topic inside out. Today, we're embarking on quite a fascinating deep dive. It's into one of history's really iconic conflicts, the Third Crusade, an era that brought together two absolutely legendary figures, Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, in a clash that would reshape the medieval Middle East and define their legacies, really.
Absolutely. And we've got a great set of sources you've given us. We're looking at excerpts from Wikipedia covering key moments like the Battle of Arsuf, the Siege of Acre, the Siege of Jerusalem back in 1187, plus insights from History.com, Tudor Chase, and even an interesting Reddit discussion looking at the money side of things, the economic interests.
Right. So our mission for you today is to unpack all of that. We want to get into the crucial events, the big strategic calls, and the lasting impact of this whole period. We'll explore how this King's Crusade actually unfolded, who these remarkable leaders really were, and what it all meant, for both the Christian and Muslim worlds at the time. Okay, let's unpack this. So before the kings of Europe even thought about setting sail, the whole situation in the Holy Land had already shifted quite dramatically. What did that landscape actually look like, politically, militarily?
Well, you really have to start with Saladin's rise. It's quite the story. Born Yusuf ibn Ayyub, he wasn't just some general. By 1186, he'd managed to unify huge swathes of Muslim territory, all the way from the Nile to the Euphrates. And he did it using, well, both force and pretty clever diplomacy. He even married Nur al-Din's widow, which helped consolidate power. He very skillfully presented himself as the champion of Islam, effectively declaring a jihad against the Crusader states.
Okay, so he's built this power base. And then comes this catastrophic moment.
Yeah.
The Battle of Hattin, July 4th, 1187. This wasn't just any battle, was it?
Oh no, far from it. Hattin was devastating for the Crusaders. A strategic decapitation, really.
Yeah.
Saladin's forces just completely crushed the army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. They were already weakened, but this was final. They captured King Guy of Lusignan, most of the nobility. The sources say the losses were so bad they prevented the Christians from carrying out any meaningful conflict.
Wow. So it basically shattered their ability to fight back effectively.
Exactly. Their military capacity, their leadership in the Levant, gone practically overnight.
And with the Crusader forces crippled like that, I assume that directly paved the way for Jerusalem.
Precisely. It was only a few months later, October 2nd, 1187. After 88 years of Christian rule, Jerusalem surrendered to Saladin. You can imagine the shock in Europe. This was, the site of Jesus Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. A huge blow to Christian faith. What's interesting, though, is Saladin's reaction. He apparently considered a massacre, but he didn't go through with it. Instead, he showed a degree of, tolerance, perhaps. He let the Christians purchase their freedom. Orthodox and Eastern Christian pilgrims got free access.
But not the Frankish pilgrims.
They had to pay a fee, yeah. But still, access was possible. And he made a point of restoring the Muslim holy sites, too.
So by late 1187, Saladin holds Jerusalem, key coastal cities like Acre. The balance of power has completely flipped. This must be the trigger for the Third Crusade.
Absolutely. That comprehensive shift was the immediate catalyst.
And the news hitting Europe. We read Pope Urban III reportedly collapsed and died just hearing about Jerusalem. How did that call to arms actually take shape?
Well, the official call came from the next pope, Gregory VIII. He issued a papal bull that's like a formal public decree called Audita Tremendi, October 29th, 1187. He framed Jerusalem's fall as, God's punishment for Christian sins. Time for a new crusade. And it quickly got nicknamed the King's Crusade because, unlike earlier ones, you had 3 of Europe's biggest monarchs personally involved, which was pretty unprecedented.
Okay, let's talk about these 3, these formidable figures answering the call.
Right. First, you have Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, an old warrior, nearly 70 by this point. He led this huge army overland. Our sources say it was meticulously planned and organized. He won some battles, sacked Iconium, but then disaster. He drowned crossing the Salif River in June 1190, just drowned. And that apparently just broke the morale of the German army, a huge blow early on.
Wow, incredible. Okay, then Philip II of France.
Philip Augustus, yeah, described as a skilled and unscrupulous politician, very calculating. Apparently a master planner, especially when it came to sieges. He turned up at Acre in April 1191.
And the third, maybe the most famous of them all, Richard the Lionheart.
Richard III of England. Yeah, legendary figure, known for his military genius and chivalry. As soon as he became king, he started raising huge amounts of money for this. famously even conquered Cyprus on his way there. Sort of a side adventure, but strategically useful. He finally arrived at Acre, June 8th, 1191.
3 kings, massive armies. This must have cost an absolute fortune. What did the sources tell us about the money side? Was it all just religious zeal, or were there other interests driving this?
That's a really important angle. Religion and politics were definitely the main drivers, no doubt. But the sources are clear. Economics played a big part too. You had heavy taxes levied across Europe, like the Saladin tithe, specifically to fund it all. But for the knights actually going, it was often ruinous. Mortgaging their land to fund the trip was, and I quote, almost always a losing proposition. So a huge personal cost.
But some people were making money.
Oh, absolutely. The Italian city-states, particularly Genoa and Venice, they made fortunes trading and transporting in the Levant. Huge commercial opportunity for them. And what's really interesting, according to one source, is that this Third Crusade actually opened a bilateral and mutually beneficial trade between the Islamic world and the Christian world. That's different from earlier crusades where the fighting often just wrecked trade.
Huh. So beyond just supplying the armies, actual trade was happening.
Seems so, and other things too. Ransoming captives was big business, pilgrim tourism was booming, and of course selling religious artifacts, lots of commercial angles.
Okay, so the money's flowing, the motivations are mixed, and these huge armies finally converge on Acre, a city Saladin already held. Why was Acre so important?
Acre was absolutely critical. It was Saladin's main supply base on the coast, his main garrison, a major arms depot. Taking it was key to any crusader success, and the siege actually started way before Richard and Philip even got there. Guy of Lusignan kicked it off back in August 1189. It quickly turned into this weird double siege. The Crusaders were blockading Acre from the land and sea,
Right.
while Saladin's main army surrounded the Crusaders themselves, cutting them off.
So they were besieging and being besieged at the same time? That sounds incredibly grim.
It was brutal, a total stalemate for nearly 2 years. Both sides suffered just horrific losses, disease, starvation, constant fighting. The Crusader camp grew huge, maybe 25,000 men by late 89, but Saladin had maybe double that surrounding them, just this grinding, awful war of attrition.
And then Richard and Philip arrive. You said their arrival shifted the dynamics. What was the big change they brought? What really surprised you reading about this phase?
Well, fresh troops and leadership obviously helped, but the big thing seems to have been the siege technology, especially Richard's. He brought these massive siege engines. Our sources mention he even gave them names like God's Own Catapult and Bad Neighbor. You get a sense of his personality there.
Yeah, powerful toys.
Powerful and effective. That extra firepower, that new energy finally broke the deadlock. Acre surrendered on July 12th, 1191, after almost 2 years.
A huge victory for the Crusaders.
Yeah?
But then something much darker happened. The execution of the prisoners. Tell us about that.
Yes, this is a really controversial, grim moment. The deal was Saladin would pay a ransom for the captured Muslim garrison, but when the payment didn't arrive on time, there's debate about why, but it didn't, Richard. Well, the sources say he was in a rage. On August 20th, 1191, he ordered the execution, the decapitation of about 2,700 Muslim prisoners, right there, in full view of Saladin's army watching from the hills.
Good grief. That's shocking.
It was, and Saladin retaliated, killing the Christian prisoners he held. It had a chilling effect, strategically too. Saladin became much more likely to just destroy fortifications rather than leave garrisons behind. Why risk them facing Richard? And it apparently deterred other garrisons from defending against Richard. They knew the potential consequences of surrender.
A brutal calculation. Okay, so Acre is taken, albeit under this dark cloud. Richard then turns south towards Jaffa, another key port. How did he approach that march, especially learning from, say, the disaster at Hattin?
He was incredibly careful. The sources stress this. Richard was mindful of the lessons of the disaster at Hattin. He wasn't going to get caught out in the open without water again. He kept the army tight, moving slowly along the coast, prioritized water stops, protection from the heat. He made sure the fleet sailed alongside them, providing supplies, security, even a place to retreat if needed. Very methodical.
But Saladin wasn't just going to let them walk there, right?
Oh, definitely not. Saladin's army, the Ayyubids, were mostly cavalry, highly mobile, maybe 25,000 of them. They harassed the Crusader column relentlessly. Little skirmishes, hit-and-run attacks, trying to break their formation, trying to lure them into a trap. We have this great account from Baha al-Din ibn Shaddad, a Muslim chronicler who was actually there. He marvels at the Crusaders' discipline, their wonderful self-control, how they moved without any hurry. He also notes how effective the Crusader crossbows were, much more powerful than their own archers' bows. They kept Saladin's horsemen at bay.
So this constant pressure, this disciplined march, it all leads up to the Battle of Arsuf. What was Richard actually planning for that day?
Right, September 7th, 1191. Saladin decided he had to risk a full-scale battle near Arsuf to stop Richard reaching Jaffa. Richard's plan seems to have been defensive initially. Keep the tight formation, let the Ayyubids attack and exhaust themselves on the Crusader infantry and crossbows, then launch a coordinated countercharge with his heavy cavalry, the Knights. But it didn't quite go to plan. Under intense attack, the Knights Hospitaller, holding the rear right flank, they just charged. They broke ranks to charge the right wing of Saladin's forces.
Okay, wait. Broke ranks? That sounds like straight-up disobedience. But you mentioned some historians see it differently. What's that about?
Yeah, that's the traditional view in subordination. Maybe they just couldn't take the pressure anymore. But some recent thinking suggests, well, maybe Richard had given trusted commanders like the Hospitaller leader some discretion. Like, if you see a perfect opportunity, take it. It speaks to maybe a more flexible command style than we usually imagine. It's debated, you know.
Interesting. Either way, the charge happened.
It happened. And Richard, whatever his initial plan, immediately saw that once the charge started, it had to be supported by all his army. He couldn't leave them hanging.
So he commits everyone. What was the immediate effect of that full Crusader charge hitting the Ayyubid lines?
Devastating. It just shattered them. Saladin's forces suffered heavy casualties. Bahas al-Din, the eyewitness again, wrote, "The rout was complete." He said Saladin himself was left with only 17 bodyguards around him at one point, just completely overwhelmed. But Richard showed his tactical skill here too. He didn't just let his knights chase wildly, which could have been disastrous. He was wary of over-rash pursuit. He actually managed to regroup them, reform them, and launch controlled follow-up charges. This sustained pressure eventually caused the Ayyubids to just break and scatter into the woodland where they dispersed into the hills.
So the sources definitely call this a decisive victory for Richard. But you said Saladin's army wasn't totally destroyed, and they didn't get Jerusalem right away. What made it decisive then, in the bigger picture?
Good question. Decisive here means a few things. Psychologically, it was huge. It seriously dented Saladin's reputation as an invincible warrior. People saw he could be beaten in open battle. It also cemented Richard's own reputation. It proved Richard's courage as a soldier and his skill as a commander. He became even more feared, and strategically, it secured the road to Jaffa. He took Jaffa shortly after, and that became his main base for the rest of his campaign. So it achieved its immediate objective and shifted the momentum.
Okay, so Richard takes Jaffa. He has a secure base. Was Jerusalem the ultimate prize finally looking achievable, or were there still major obstacles?
He did try. He actually marched his army towards Jerusalem twice. Got close enough both times that they were within sight of the holy city. You can imagine the anticipation. But Richard was also a pragmatist, it seems. He realized holding Jerusalem, even if he took it, would be incredibly difficult. He didn't control the surrounding territory, the supply lines were stretched. Plus, the sources mention appallingly bad weather, cold with heavy rain and hailstorms, just miserable conditions. And crucially, there was dissent within the Crusader leadership.
Internal politics again, even with Jerusalem in sight.
Especially then, there were big arguments about strategy. Richard apparently favored attacking Egypt first, Saladin's power base, believing that was a key to holding Jerusalem long-term. Others wanted a direct assault on the holy city now.
So they weren't just fighting Saladin, they were fighting amongst themselves too.
Constantly, it seems. And you had that whole messy business over who was actually king of Jerusalem. Guy of Lusignan's claim was weak after his wife died. Isabella of Jerusalem then married Conrad of Montferrat, a rival. Then Conrad got assassinated. It was complicated. Eventually, Richard sort of compensated Guy by selling him Cyprus.
Right, the island he picked up on the way. So it's the mix of military challenges, bad weather, internal squabbles. How did it all end? What was the final result?
It wasn't feasible under the circumstances, and he was getting urgent news from England. His brother John was making trouble trying to usurp the throne.
The classic Prince John story.
Exactly. So, needing to get back, Richard negotiated. He hammered out the Treaty of Jaffa with Saladin, signed September 2nd, 1192. It established a 3-year truce. Key point. Christian pilgrims got free access to the holy places in Jerusalem, but the city itself stayed under Muslim control. The Crusaders kept a thin strip of coast from Tyre down to Jaffa, but as a concession to Saladin, the defenses of Ascalon, a city further south, were demolished and it was handed back.
A compromise, then. Not the glorious recapture everyone hoped for, but not a total failure either.
Pretty much sums it up.
So we've done this deep dive into the Third Crusade, This incredible clash of titans, Richard and Saladin, years of campaigning. When you step back, what's the core legacy of this whole period?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, yeah, it's mixed. The main goal, recapturing Jerusalem, failed, can't argue that. However, it was far from pointless. It dramatically reversed most of Saladin's gains after Hattin. Remember how he swept through? Most of those conquests were wiped away. And maybe most importantly, it managed to reestablish a viable Frankish state along the coast, based in Acre. That state survived for another 100 years. It kept a European foothold there.
And Richard the Lionheart. How does history remember him after all this?
His legacy is really built on that image of military prowess, strategic leadership, and diplomatic skills. Arsuf, especially, cemented him as a formidable military leader, but he's complex. That pragmatic decision not to seize Jerusalem, it was bitterly unpopular with many of his own soldiers at the time. And things like the heavy taxes back home, the Acre massacre, those cast a shadow. He's both the chivalric hero and the ruthless medieval ruler.
And Saladin, how did he come out of it? What was his view?
Well, the defeat at Arsuf and losing the coast definitely hurt. It dented Saladin's reputation, no question. Showed he wasn't invincible. After Arsuf, the sources say he was no longer willing to risk a further full-scale attack on Richard's main army. A clear sign of respect or maybe fear. Saladin himself apparently worried about the truce, feared the Crusaders would just get stronger, saying our enemy will grow strong now that they have retained these lands. And tragically, he died just months after the Crusade ended, worn out, really, exhausted from a life spent in near continuous military campaigns. And his empire. It started fragmenting pretty soon after.
Wow. So a period of just immense effort, sacrifice, moments of brilliance, brutal realities, complex politics, ending not with a bang, but a truce.
Exactly. And it kind of leaves you thinking, doesn't it? It raises this important question for you, listening. When you look at these deep dives, you see the military genius, the clever diplomacy, but also the terrible human costs, the compromises. How does that challenge your idea of what victory really means? Is it just about achieving every single objective you set out with? Or is it sometimes about something else, maybe preserving what you can, finding a way to move forward? Even if it's not perfect, it's definitely something to mull over, isn't it?
It absolutely is. You see both leaders forced to compromise in the end. Perhaps real victory sometimes looks like, well, like pragmatism, making the best of a difficult situation. Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.